When you think about online gambling, Europe is an absolute giant, a multi-billion-euro industry. But it's all happening inside this fascinating, complex maze of rules that's unlike anywhere else in the world. So let's break down what makes it tick. Okay, first, let's just wrap our heads around the sheer scale here. We're talking about a projected gross revenue for European online gambling in 2025 of, get this, 27 billion euros. That's not just a big number, it absolutely dwarfs what you see on any other continent. It really shows you just how massive this industry has become. So naturally, that brings up a really important question, right? With that much money flying around, who's actually setting the rules for this gigantic digital market? And the answer, well, it's pretty unique to Europe. You see, Europe's spot at the top of the gambling world, it's no fluke, not at all. It's actually the result of a very specific, and you could say, a very European way of handling the rules. You know, there's a reason you'll hear experts call Europe the gold standard, and it really boils down to this mature, stable, regulatory environment they've built. It does two things incredibly well. It builds trust with players, and it makes sure consumers are protected. So what's the secret sauce? How do they pull this off? Well, it's all about a concept they call the harmonized patchwork. Now, just think of it like a giant quilt. The European Union as a whole provides the main pattern, these big, broad standards that everyone has to follow. But then, each individual country gets to pick its own colors and fabrics. You know, their own specific national laws. It's this mix of unity and independence that's really the key to the whole system. Okay, but a patchwork system like this, it naturally creates a bit of a tension, doesn't it? How can one single union operate when everyone's got a slightly different rulebook? Let's dive into that a little deeper. It really comes down to two layers. At the top, you've got the EU setting these big, continent-wide standards that are non-negotiable. We're talking about things like GDPR for data protection and strict anti-money laundering rules. But then, on the ground level, the individual nations get to control the nitty-gritty. They decide who gets a license, how much tax they pay, and exactly how they can market their services. So a good way to think about it is the EU lays the foundation, but each country gets to design and build its own house right on top of it. But here's the crucial part. Even with all these different national rules, everyone is fundamentally playing the same game. They're all aiming for the same goals. Every single European regulator is focused on things like tough licensing, total transparency, strong protections for consumers, and really pushing responsible gaming. It's this shared common ground that makes the whole market feel so secure and fair. Okay, so that's the theory, right? But what does this patchwork actually look like in the real world? Let's zoom in and take a look at three completely different markets to see it in action. First up, we have the old pro, the veteran of the group, the United Kingdom. This is one of the oldest, most established online gambling markets, not just in Europe, but in the entire world. And, being the veteran comes with its pros and cons. On the one hand, it is the largest market. Player engagement is through the roof, which is obviously a massive draw for any company. But, and it's a big but, that popularity means the competition is absolutely fierce. Plus, the UK Gambling Commission is known for being one of the toughest regulators on the planet. They have really strict limits on advertising, and they're always putting pressure on operators to prove that players can actually afford to bet. Really, the perfect way to sum it up is as a strong yet competitive market with substantial potential. The UK is an absolute powerhouse for sure, but it is a serious battleground if you want to get in on the action. All right, now for a total change of pace. Let's talk about Germany. This market is a giant. A sleeping giant, maybe, with enormous potential, but it's also tied up with some incredibly restrictive rules. So you look at the numbers for Germany, and it's mouth-watering for operators. It has Europe's biggest potential player base, and the population has a lot of disposable income. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, here's the catch. The country is super stingy with licenses, especially for things like online casinos. And the barriers to entry? They're huge. We're talking a mandatory €5 million security deposit just to get your foot in the door. So, the takeaway for Germany is pretty straightforward. It's a massive, lucrative prize, no doubt about it. But getting that prize means carefully navigating a minefield of some of the strictest regulations you'll find anywhere. It's the absolute definition of a high-risk, high-reward play. And for our last stop on this little tour, let's look at a market that's much newer to the scene, a real promising newcomer.
the Netherlands?
The Netherlands is a super exciting growth opportunity, mainly because it's got a great digital infrastructure and a really tech-savvy population. But operators there have to deal with a laser focus on player safety. This means they have intense responsible gambling measures to follow, and the marketing restrictions are incredibly strict. Like, they have a near total ban on using celebrities or sports stars in ads. And that balance is really the whole story here. The market has promising potential, absolutely, but it also comes with moderate barriers because of those demanding regulatory requirements. If you want to succeed in the Netherlands, you have to make player safety your #1 priority, right from day one. Okay, so we've looked at the veteran, the restrictive giant, and the promising newcomer. It's clear this is a diverse and constantly shifting landscape. So where does it all go from here? What does the future of the game look like? Well, there are 3 huge tech trends that are already starting to shake things up. First, mobile gaming is just continuing its total dominance. Second, AI is allowing for these incredibly personalized experiences for players. And third, you've got blockchain being integrated for better security and transparency. Every one of these is pushing the market in new directions. And this is where things get really interesting and where the pressure starts to build. You have this fast-moving, borderless technology creating all these new challenges for a regulatory system that is, by its very nature, slower, more methodical, and built on individual country lines. Which brings us to the big final question hanging over everything. In a world where technology accelerates at lightning speed, can Europe's rulemakers with their patchwork system actually keep up? That, right there, is the multi-billion-euro question.